if there is access to abortion. We're learning more about the suspect in the Paul Pelosi attack. Fox's Christina Coleman has more.
The suspect, 42-year-old David DePapi. The New York Post reports that Berkeley residents describe him as a drug-addicted homeless man and who was living in an empty, dilapidated school bus from time to time. Lawmakers on both sides of the aisle are condemning this violence.
DePapi's arraignment set for Tuesday. He will face charges of attempted homicide, elder abuse, and burglary. 82-year-old Paul Pelosi is recovering from surgery on a skull fracture. South Korean police are investigating what caused a stampede that killed at least 153 people at a Halloween celebration in Seoul Saturday night. Police launching a 561-member task force. America is listening to Fox News.
I'm Dr. Sama Bini Young. I've served as a Senator and Director of Labor. I'm also an entrepreneur and educator. As your Senator, I will prioritize the training and education of students and workers to support the rebuilding of our economy. I understand our community's need for affordable living and housing and the need for aggressive drug enforcement to stop its serious impact. And there's a need for smarter and smaller government, like a part-time legislature that works for Guam and having more efficient GovGuam departments. Please support me with one of your votes for Senator to work for you on these issues. I'm Dr. Sama Bini Young.
Paid for by friends of Sama Bini Young. Gina Ramos, Treasurer.
Of the day, I'm Senator Chris Dueñas. We've gone from a viral pandemic to a drug epidemic. It is time to stand up the multi-agency unified law enforcement group to stem the flow of drugs and combat crime with force. MAULIC is not just another task force, it is a program focused on stopping the distribution of meth and opioids, as well as placing enough police officers patrolling our streets. It is time to make Guam MAULIC again.
Re-elect Senator Chris Dueñas. The fight continues.
I am Chris Dueñas, and I approve this message.
Florida Governor Ron DeSantis appearing at a rally to support New York gubernatorial candidate Lee Zeldin. Fox's Alexis McAdams has more.
Both candidates are hoping this extra help on the campaign trail from those big political names will give them the push they need to come out on top. Florida Governor Ron DeSantis joined Congressman Lee Zeldin at a pretty big rally on Long Island. The well-known Republican leader hyped up that crowd, telling voters Zeldin is the guy to turn New York around. Governor Kathy Hochul's campaign pulling in their own big names for support, releasing new radio ad recorded by former President Barack Obama. As the gap closes, crime remains the hot topic, which is not a surprise. Zeldin says he'll declare a statewide crime crisis on day one if elected. The incumbent recently launched a crime plan of her own, talking about the subway crime that's been spiking here in the city.
With tensions increasing between the U.S. and China, California Congressman Darrell Issa tells Sunday Morning Futures with Maria Bartiromo that anyone who has connections to China could potentially be a threat.
At the end of the day, you have to assume, sadly, that if somebody has family in mainland China, that they're compromised. If you're a student from China, you're compromised. If you're going back to China, you're compromised.
A unique honorary police officer gets sworn in at a Central Florida Police Department.
The city of Ocala, Florida added a miniature horse to the force, swearing in the atypical equine as an honorary police officer. Officer Magic earned its stripes after being trained to provide emotional support to people in times of need. Magic is part of the award-winning nonprofit Gentle Carousel, which visits thousands of adults and children each year in hospitals, hospice programs, and those suffering after traumatic events. Ocala is one of only 4 major thoroughbred centers in the world, with 600,000 thoroughbred horse farms producing 45 national champions and now 1 police officer.
That's Fox's Ann Carey. I'm Laura Cantor, Fox News.
Come try Guam's original Chamorro restaurant with Pica's best 5 years running. Mezcla Chamorro Fusion Bistro. Experience Chef Peter's candied salmon over scallion coconut rice, octopus to naktak, Chamorro platter, and their award-winning gourmet hamburgers. Or if you're looking for something healthy, try their keto-friendly menu. Come and enjoy Mezcla's half-a-day service at their Hagåtña and Grand Plaza Tumon location. Call their Hagåtña location at 479-2652 for reservations.
Choice Broadcasting introduces their unbeatable lineup of morning show. Hands down winners of Guam's morning radio battle. Daryl Lizama grooves his way through Boss 104 playing Guam's favorite classic hits. Morning Mouth Ray Gibson shakes the cage on 93.3 The Point.
And now, we are proud to announce the Morning Blender with Kyle Mandapat, mixing it up at sunrise on Star 101.
If you're an advertiser trying to reach the most valuable ears, we've got the shows that listeners have been tuning into for decades.
One call gets all 3.
671-888-7346. That's 888-REIO.
Gas is expensive, so let the bank come to you. Through our remote deposit capture, you can deposit your checks into your account from your phone. And with our Dynamite Bank Pacific Visa debit card, you can use your money anytime, anywhere. It's the perfect combo.
Now we're banking on the future. Services to choose. Bank Pacific, where others put branches, we place roots.
Equal housing lender. Member FDIC. Crank it up.
Welcome to Tall Tales with Bob Klitzkie, the only show on talk radio where common sense is a lot more common. Phone lines are now open at 888-TALK. That's 888-8255. And now, The Point proudly brings you Tall Tales with Senator Bob Klitzkie.
Necessary to the security of our free state, the right of the people to keep it bear arms shall not be infringed. I start this show that way every day because it gives you a really good idea what the show's all about. Firearms, gun safety, individual rights, freedom, the United States Constitution, a conservative approach to government, small government, free enterprise. If that's what you're interested in, well, by golly, you're in the right place. If it's not what you're interested in, you are really in the right place because you need some learning, partner. Yeah, listen to that cheering section back there, over there in the peanut gallery. Good afternoon, Jose.
Good afternoon, Bob.
Great to be on Tall Tales.
It is Monday.
Yeah, well, you know, I jonesed for a month and a half traveling around in the mainland. No microphone, no Tall Tales, no Jose. It was no tailgaters.
No, none. But we had him here, and everyone thought that I had locked you up in the little room back over here, but you were on sabbatical, and much needed rest, and now you're back.
Here I am, big as life, twice as ugly. All right, let's start out with Zemi Ikotny, but today, going to take a little different approach to Zemi Ikotny because the editorial is about ancestral landowners, something that does not exist. Now, I went through this rather thoroughly last week, but I think it's time to revisit the whole process. I've got a column written by Speaker Tetlahi. Speaker, ancestral landowners deserve government support for return of property. I'm going to take issue with that. And then I have a column here, or a letter to the editor by Robert Underwood, taking on Jim Moylan. And for once, I kind of see Underwood's point. I kind of agree with Underwood. So I want to go through those, and then I will have laid the foundation for the editorial that the Daily News wrote, which is once more part of the same old thing. Well, let's pander to these folks, you know. Let's give them money. Let's make ourselves feel good by making them feel good. So here's Speaker Tetlahi. The legislature, through recent laws, has shown its commitment to a new hospital and urgent repairs to the existing hospital. I'm all for that. Hospitals benefit every single person. Even the guy who says, you know, I'm 90 years old, I never took a pill, I've never been to the doctor, I never go to the hospital, benefits him just the same as it benefits the guy who's at death's door and is in the hospital all the time. The legislature, through recent laws, has shown its commitment to a new hospital and urgent repairs to the existing hospital. However, the decision to build an entire medical campus on 102 acres of federal property via a 99-year lease has not been fully vetted by the original landowners. My God!
Wrong.
What is this world coming to?
She's an attorney.
It hasn't been vetted by the original landowners. Now, let me translate that into English for you, okay? There's some property out on Route 15, also known as the Back Road to Anderson, formerly known as Hall, H-A-U-L, Hall Road, that people refer to loosely as Eagles Field. And that property was owned by individuals prior to the time it was taken by the national government through a process called eminent domain, which is one of the incidents of sovereignty. Every government does it, including the government of Guam. It's part of the necessity for organizing government and land use. It's not something new. It's not something that the United States figured out, oh, we'll just do this to screw Chamorros. That's not what it's all about. And full disclosure, some of my wife's, actually, people who are now deceased, who were my wife's predecessors, owned some of that land. So if you're looking for if I were looking for an ancestral landowner, I wouldn't have to look any farther than my own house. Except I know that the ancestral land owner is about as common as the unicorn. They only exist in people's imaginations. So you hear this, you hear another phrase, let's give the land back to the original owners. Well, as was pointed out on Ray's show this morning, you want to go to the original owners, it's probably people that owned the land during the Spanish regime. And, it may very well be that the king or queen of Spain gave patents to certain people to take title to real property on the island during the Spanish regime. When the Americans took over, those titles were then recognized, etc. However, one guy who purports to be something of a ancient Chamorro scholar, Ellen Quintano, says that, the Spanish didn't have land tenure laws like we did. If during the time of the Spanish crown, if you wanted to farm land, you would go to the Spanish crown and they would give you something like a license to farm that property. And of course, you would turn over some of the crops to this crown. So if you really want to talk about original landowners, you kind of got to Debre un tungo fino español, because you got to go back to the Spanish times for that. Now, what people really are talking about are pre-condemnation owners. So let's say that Ogun owns Blackacre. The national government comes along and said, we need this to build a military base. They tell Mr. Ogun this is what's going on. They'll probably offer to buy it from him, try to negotiate a price. If that doesn't work, then the national government files suit in the District Court of Guam, in the federal court. And they, in their papers, they say that we need this property for public use, and this is the estimated compensation we're going to pay for it. We'll deposit that money into the registry of the Superior Court. Mr. Uggan, you can draw that money right now without any prejudice to your claim. If Uggan doesn't reach in settlement with the government, the case will go to trial, and a jury will decide how much the just compensation for that property is. Mr. Uggan will then receive a check if the estimated compensation didn't cover it. End of story. Now, after that happens, you know what Mr. Uggan's rights to that real property are? They're no different than mine or Jose's. The former owner is a stranger to the title of that real property. Now, that doesn't, I know that doesn't ring anybody's bell out there, because they're going to say, but we didn't want them to take our land. That was our land ever since. We farmed there. Nana's brother was born, and this is unfortunate. This is sad, but it's the kind of thing that happens from time to time. It is part and parcel of the whole eminent domain procedure that even if you don't want your land taken, if the government in its infinite wisdom decides that it must be used for a public purpose, that's it. And the pre-condemnation owner has no right, superior to anybody else to that land. So that's what happened. So the land was paid for the first time around. Now, this guy over here, the wise guy in the lazy boy chair, saying, Yeah, but they only gave us 6 cents an acre for it, and it's worth $50 an acre now. What do you think of them apples, Bob? Well, what I think of it is this. A just compensation was calculated at the time of the taking, not 50 years later or 40 years later or something like that. So the land was paid for. There was a lot of rumbling, kind of like what you hear right now. And Mr. Wanpad, our delegate to Washington, got legislation through Congress that provided another payment for everyone whose land was taken by eminent domain. You didn't have to prove up that there was any wrongdoing, any overreaching, or anything else, just that you owned the property and you wanted more money. So we went through the whole process again. So the national government paid for the land twice. And then before 2000, legislation was passed, part of the BRAC undertaking, Base Realignment and Closure Committee. A lot of bases were closed because the United States government decided that the bases weren't needed. And the way the system works is this. Ordinarily, when the national government doesn't need real property, an agency of the national government doesn't need real property, it will make that property available to other agencies. So if DOD doesn't need it and Department of Interior says, yeah, we want to raise buffalo on that property, then DOD would probably deed the property to Department of Interior. If no federal agency wants it, then the national government will give the state government a crack at it. So that's what happened here. Large chunks of land were conveyed to us, the territorial government, which is the same thing as the state government in that context. There was a clause in all of those conveyances, though, that says, so long as that property is used for a public purpose. But if it's not, it reverts back to the national government. So there's a potential ticking time bomb for all that land that people got back from the national government. Take a look at what's going on with the Northern Wastewater Treatment Plant. That if the land was given to an individual as opposed to used for a public purpose, the national government could claw it back. That's the way I read it, and that's the way I think others read it too. So that's where we are. Then in the year 2000, Congress passed another law that says you can't give the land back to the pre-condemnation owner, period, which I suspect was a response to what had happened. A while ago, I spent some time on the show talking about what is sillily called the MAGA-HAGA Highway. You know, the women's highway, as though men can't use it, right? Yeah, so the highway that goes across what used to be NAS, it's a 4-lane road, then a 2-lane road, then a 4-lane road. It's supposed to have been a 4-lane road. Ray talked about it quite a bit this morning on his show. It's supposed to be a very nice, limited access, easy way to get from Tamuning to Barrigada.
I'll take the hit. Because it's the MAGA-HAGA Highway, there was nothing easy about it.
You got it. You got it right, Jose. So what did our local government do with that property? It gave away large chunks of the right-of-way, of the potential right-of-way, gave it back to the original owners, the ancestral owners. Yeah, that was a good idea. And I picked this up because Josh Tenorio said, well, I got to now try to convince the Federal Highway Administration that they have to condemn that land again. Because in order to build a highway, according to Federal Highway Administration standards, they need more space. But they've given the land away already. So according to what I found out from the Lieutenant Governor, they asked, can't you guys take that property in eminent domain? They say, hey guys, hello. You already had it and you gave it away. No, we're not going to use eminent domain for it. So what should have been a really great idea, once again, was sacrificed on the altar of pandering to a very small, very vocal, apparently well-connected group of people. Now, if you were to do a statistical workup of how many people have benefited from the give the land back to the original landowners, I suspect it's a very small percentage of the total island population, even a very small percentage of the total Chamorro population. It was a huge windfall for some people who got large tracts of land with buildings on them at NAS, took title to them, and leased them back to the government. And we wonder why we never have any money.
So a little bit of ad hominem. If there was a clause that you could get the land back, but you can't sell it, lease it to anybody else but for your own use, I bet you people will go, maybe not.
Yeah, maybe not so much. Yeah,
I know that's a poor way of characterizing it, but it just seems funny from the history of land given back.
Exactly. So then I think probably as a response to what the government did, the government created this Ancestral Lands Commission, appointed by the governor, confirmed by the legislature. They were to determine who the pre-condemnation owners were and convey that land to those I'm not going to say giving it back, because it's not back. It's as though those people had never had anything to do with that land before. It's the same, no different than giving it to me because they like my new beard, which wouldn't be a bad idea, actually. And of course, there was no thought about, well, if we are to return that land to the pre-condemnation owners, then it's only fair that they pony up the 2 payments that they receive from the national government into the Treasury of Guam, and interest at the judgment rate of 6% per year for all the time that money was outstanding. That would seem to be kind of equitable, wouldn't it, Jose?
A little bit.
But as it was, it's just a complete windfall. So then in 2000, the law changed, and the law said, Guam, you can't give it back to the pre-condemnation owners. And now, of course, Jim Moylan's going to go in there. He's going to show those guys in Congress what for. I can just see Jim Moylan, walking up to say Mitch McConnell, his fellow Republican, Mitch, let's shake. And Mitch puts his hand out. Jim grabs his arm and does a body slam right there. Said, give the land back to the original owners. Moylan is such a tough customer, He'll have the U.S. Congress wrapped around his little finger on about day 3. That's my prediction, Jose.
The pen is mightier than the suplex, though.
Absolutely. So that's what you need to know to understand the give the land back to the original landowners. Now, here's Speaker Titlahi. The legislature, through recent laws, has shown its commitment to a new hospital and urgent repairs. However, the decision to build the entire hospital medical campus on 102 acres of federal property via 99 years lease has not been fully vetted by the original landowners nor the people of Guam. Now, I went to the statutes, the title, I think it's Title 21 that deals with real property, 21 or 19, I don't remember which. And there's clear language in there that says before you build a hospital, you must call a meeting of all the original landowners, and they must vet. She's a lawyer. Where does this right to vet arise from? It's more of the same old thing. Hey, you guys, I'm sticking up for you. November 8th, remember? And higher political ambitions. Remember, I stuck up for you to help you get your land back, you ancestral landowners.
Poetic license is a large net at this time.
Absolutely. On January 15, 2021, the Secretary of the Navy wrote a letter to the governor stating, I am pleased to now identify the DoD parcel for the medical complex and added to the list of parcels eligible for return to the territory of Guam, and attached a list showing the 102 total acres in the Latlo, that's the Eagles Field area. It's unclear how the government of Guam concluded that a 99-year lease was more desirable than an outright return of the property. Common sense. Oh, yeah, man, common sense. Common sense tells you that the earth is flat, that objects that are heavier than air could never fly, and certainly iron ships could never float. If that's all you got working for you is common sense, you ain't got much. Let's see. Common sense tells us that the Navy's foregoing use of 102 acres for 99 years indicates no immediate need or that it is excess. Therefore, the ancestral landowners have an absolute right to it. They should be able to drive out and start building houses on it right now. Bill 345-36 was introduced by the administration as recourse for the Latlo landowners and proposes to add an additional class of landowners to the hundreds. Now, key in on that word, hundreds. Hundreds. That could be as many as 999 people, Jose. Can't be 1,000. Hundreds of people. The population of the island is 154,000. And we're talking about providing a windfall for 999 of them. That's good government, isn't it? Let's see here. Add an additional class of landowners to the hundreds that are already required to be compensated by the land bank. Now, the land bank, I forgot to explain, the Ancestral Lands Commission also took title to any commercial property that was returned, or property with commercial potential that was returned or was deeded to the government by the national government. And they have the authority to lease that property and then deposit the money from the leasehold into a land bank and use that to pay people whose land could never be returned. For instance, the real property under the runway at NAS. That's what the land bank was all about. Okay. Now, add an additional class of landowners to the hundreds that are already required to be compensated by the land bank. Under this proposal, Latlo landowners would have to give up their claim to ancestral title forever. Whoa, what a sacrifice, Jose. They're going to have to give up their claim to ancestral forever.
Forever!
You know what? I'll grab a piece of paper here.
At least until the next election.
Yeah. And I forgot to bring my pen along today, but, you know, what is the price of something that has no value whatsoever? They're giving up something that is absolutely worthless, but they're giving it up forever. So that makes it worth a whole lot more, right? You know, it's amazing that Therese and these other give the land back to the landowners ought to start every writing that they produce with the words, once upon a time. Because that's how you start a fairy tale. And that's exactly what this is.
A duende's tale.
Exactly. Common sense tells us that the Navy's foregoing use of 102 acres for 99 years indicates no immediate need or that it's success. Well, only if you don't read the newspapers. Because now the Navy is getting cold feet saying, we don't know about that lease after all, because we're bringing in this missile interception system, a 360-degree system, which means that parts of the system are going to be located in many different parts of the island. And we may have to put some of it right smack on the goal line or the 50-yard line of Eagles Fields, and we're not going to euchre ourselves out of that land if we still need it. Did you see that in the paper, Therese, when you're writing this up? Bill 345-36 was introduced by the administration as a recourse for the lot law landowners and proposes to add, excuse me, I already read that. The bill does not fund the land bank, but only suggests possible funding sources which may include taxpayer sources like Section 30. Oh, that's a wonderful idea, right? No sense spending money that we get pursuant to Section 30 of the Organic Act, something no other jurisdiction in the country gets. What it does, it conveys money paid in income tax by servicemen stationed on Guam into the Guam Treasury.
Why is that treated like a rainy day fund? It's whenever there's something to be given back, they say Section 30, but it's not given back, it's taking from us.
Exactly. It's kind of like, well, you know, we got it for nothing anyhow, so we can piss it away. It's okay. So Section 30 and other annual local sources. That would be like income tax, GRT, and other annual local source. Nice way to kind of cloud it there, Therese. And amounts deemed appropriate by the government of Guam. The Guam Ancestral Lands Commission has yet to formally weigh in on the bill. I'll bet they'll be for it. How much you want to bet, Jose? I'll bet they'll be in favor of it. However, that isn't the body that has the final say. The ancestral landowners have to vet it first before we make any decisions here. I look forward to getting their input as well as all original landowners that would be affected by this measure. How about my input? You're not interested in my input? I'm going to wind up paying for a pretty good chunk of this stuff. Failure to advocate the return of excess lands is contrary to the policy upheld by the government of Guam since the adoption of Public Law 2545 in 1999, which established the Guam Ancestral Lands Commission. Legislature declared it was necessary to memorialize the true history of land takings on Guam. In spite of well-settled legal protections, as a the true history, not the well-settled legal protections. The fact that there were legal protections means nothing because you didn't vet it with the original landowners. As a foundation for establishing a process for recognition of indigenous Guamanians' claims to their ancestral lands, also known as ancestral titles. This is straight from George Orwell. You invent new vocabulary as a means of misleading people. What is the value of an ancestral title? It has no value because there's no such thing. So that property rights of all citizens residing on Guam may be fully and equally protected in the future. How are you protecting my property rights? I have to pay property tax on the little skits of land that I own, and you're going to use that to make ex gratia payments, to make gifts.
Property taxes are going up.
Yeah. Recently, landowners of Lotlo came to the legislature to urge the government to advocate for the return of their property. You could knock me over with a feather. They actually came to the legislature and asked for that. Of course, they've been programmed for it for the last 25 years. And it's kind of like Joe Biden saying, yeah, I'd like an ice cream cone if you offered him one. I thank them for reminding us of the real effects of the massive and unjust land takings. Now, you can just throw this out here. Massive and unjust. You don't have to tell us why it was unjust. You don't have to tell us which laws were broken because you know what the proofs are here, Jose? You cannot refute this. Everybody knows. Everybody knows that the land takings were massive and unjust. And the relocation and dispossession of homelands, farmlands, and food sources over generations. I remain committed to justice for Guam. Oh, wait a minute, let me read that. You got that cheer handy, Jose? This is for Therese Terlahi. I remain committed to justice for Guam. For everybody except Asher Lubofsky's dad. Ask him. Yeah. And urge that we remain united in continuing to advocate for a return of excess lands. I don't have any problem with getting the land back, but let's use it. Let's put it to a public purpose. Let's not have another giveaway like with the Maga Haga Highway. So that's Teresa Terlahi's pandering pitch.
This boils down to me. Two entities, the executive branch and the legislative branch, decided to play hot potato with a group of people that never asked to be the potato. And they're each giving it to each other, saying, you take it before the music stops.
Yeah.
Or I get burned. And this is it's sad that every time they become the easy marks.
Yep. Yeah, building false hopes and then coming in and denigrating the other side, saying they can't solve it. Only one that can solve it is me. Jim Moylan being the poster child for this. Now, Jim Moylan, of course, took on Robert Underwood and tried to lay blame on Robert Underwood for the statute that says you can't give the land back. You can't give the land to individuals anymore. If you call them original landowners or ancestral, it doesn't matter. You can't do it anymore. And Robert introduced the bill that became that law. So Jim Moylan took him on. I spent some time covering that the other day. It was in the context of Juan Pat 10 and Jim Moylan. Let's take a short break here.
Kona Brewing Company, Wenti Vineyards, and First Hawaiian Bank presents internationally renowned slack key master, Ledward Ka'apana. Ledward Ka'apana, founding member of the legendary Hawaiian music group Hui Ohana, joined Grammy-nominated and multiple Nahoku Hanohano Award winner Ledward Ka'apana for 2 magical nights.
Saturday, November 12th, the Tsubaki Tower, doors open at 6 p.m. And Sunday, November 13th, the Hotel Nico Guam, doors open at 5 p.m. Tickets are available at Ambrose and at the door. $40 in advance and $50 at the door.
Slack Key Master Ledward Ka'apana, live on Guam, Saturday, November 12th and Sunday, November 13th.
Presented by Kona Brewing Company, Wenti Vineyards, and First Hawaiian Bank. Special thanks to Choice Broadcasting, The Point, Star 101, and Boss 104.
Half a day. This is Clara Manglania from Security Title. A power of attorney can be a useful tool in a real estate transaction, but if abused, it can result in devastating loss. Choosing your representative should be done with the utmost care and should be very specific about the powers being granted. To mitigate loss, the team at Security Title confirms with the owner prior to using a power of attorney to sell the property. Each transaction is unique. Let the professionals at Security Title use our experience to facilitate a secure closing. We are here to help.
Welcome back to Tall Tales with Bob Klitzkie, Guam's single voice of reason. Call now, 888-TALK. That's 888-8255.
Okay, so here we are back again dealing with the land giveaway that Therese Terlahi is so excited about, giving the land back to people who have no right to it. And this is Robert Underwood's response to Jim Moylan. Here it goes. Congressional candidate Jim Moylan will not let truth or distortion stop him from saying anything to get elected. It's up to political analysts to decide whether the racialization of the human rights issue of Chamorro self-determination, now that's a mouthful, the racialization of the human rights issue of Chamorro self-determination. I could probably do a whole program just on that phrase, racialization human rights. It's not racist to say only people of a certain race can vote in a particular election. That's a matter of human rights, right? Yeah. Whether the racialization of human rights issues of Chamorro self-determination or his sudden and unprecedented support of Chamorro original landowners, Robert understands the vocabulary,
Wrong.
are ploys to generate support or principled stands. Generating these ads in the last part of an election reveals his true motivation. I also have to take issue with the description of John O'Connor's description of Public Law 106-504 as now infamous. Yeah, that wasn't correct. You know, that's not up to John O'Connor to describe something as now infamous. And then Robert goes on to say, as the primary author of this legislation, that's Public Law 106-104, which literally took 4 years to move through Congress, the purpose is to put the government of Guam ahead of all federal agencies in return of any future excess lands. Normal practice is to give excess lands to other federal agencies first. This law provides a glide path to return of excess lands not afforded to any other jurisdiction in the United States. The reason we're discussing any land return to Guam first is because of this, quote, infamous legislation. Otherwise, we would have to stand in line after other federal agencies under cumbersome GSA procedures. As for public benefit, this has a legislative history when it comes to Guam. This is the definition that was applied to the return of lands under Public Law 103-339 and the property returned under BRAC from the closure of the Naval Air Station. Dozens of original landowners now have their land in their hands. The Department of Defense consistently opposed this legislation over 4 years because they understood that it placed Guam at the head of the line and forces them to talk to Gov Guam about land issues. You always got to work the little grievance politics angle in there, don't you? The leaders of Guam should stand together to maximize our control and management once it is Gov Guam property. It has happened in the past and it can happen again. In other words, Robert's saying, just go ahead and do it. Don't pay any attention to those Navy guys. Instead, people who oppose or support the proposed medical campus at he spells it Lalo, not Eagles Fields, are using 106-504 to run interference for their position. Argue about the hospital, not about the law. But the worst manipulation is for Jim Moylan to claim that he will amend 106-504 to allow original landowners to get direct transfer of lands. Not only is this unrealistic, it raises false hopes. Now, why should Moylan be any different from anybody else? That seems to be the action here, to raise false hopes and then capitalize on them. Not only is this realistic, it raises false hopes. It's one thing to lie to me, as he did in the past about Chamorro self-determination. It's another thing to raise false hopes to people to get votes for something that cannot be done. You heard it here, folks. Yeah, I even went through a mock scenario of Moylan trying to argue on the floor of the House. Well, yeah, that land that you guys paid for twice, you need to give it back to the people that owned it before condemnation, just a freebie, an ex gratia payment. Talk about common sense. That just doesn't pass the common sense test. At best, he is ignorant of the legislative process. At worst, he continues to lie and misrepresent. Well, Robert, I've been critical of a lot of the stuff you said, but I think you got some good points here this time around.
That sounds like a quotable quote, an all-purpose quote for Mr. Underwood here. It is another thing to raise false hopes to people to get votes for something that cannot be done.
Exactly. Yeah, I got to add that
like
to my
that.
great pronouncements. Yeah.
Great quote.
Yeah. And that's exactly Moylan, you know, a non-voting delegate from an island in the Western Pacific is going to go and convince a majority of the 435 members of the House of Representatives that land that the government has paid for, the national government has paid for twice, should be given to the people who owned it before it was bought and paid for twice, and not follow the ordinary scheme of things where land that is no longer needed is put to a public purpose. Therefore, it benefits everybody. But as it is, it's just a take money out of Bob's pocket and put it in somebody else's pocket scheme. That's what it amounts to. We are a threadbare government. We're always in a position where we're saying we don't have enough money to do this, to do that right, et cetera, no funds, et cetera. Of course, the way to increase your funds, the value of the money that you have to expend on worthwhile projects, is to give away as much of your property as you can. So, like, you know, if you have a son that you want to send to college, and you sit down with a sharp pencil and you figure, man, I just can't quite make it. I wonder what I could do to gather up, you know, a couple $1,000 more so I could send Junior off to college. And Therese Terlahi sticks her head in the window and says, give away your car. You know, I'm supposed to give away my 5-year-old car, Therese? Yeah. How will that benefit me? Well, give it to the guy that you bought it from. Give it back to the original owner. He'll love you forever if you do that. I don't think so, Therese. I don't think that's a good idea. So here we are. That's the foundation for today's editorial. Now, this is the opportunity for the Daily News to come in and actually say something. You could listen to tall tales. You could tell the truth. You could be honest. You could tell the folks out there that there is no Santa Claus, there is no Easter Bunny, the Tooth Fairy doesn't exist, and there is no right for pre-condemnation owners to ever have any more right to that land than you or I do. Okay, so here it goes. Here's the editorial. Yeah, let's take a short break and I'll come back to the editorial, Jose.
Half a day, I'm Senator Chris Dueñas. We've gone from a viral pandemic to a drug epidemic. It is time to stand up the multi-agency unified law enforcement group to stem the flow of drugs and combat crime with force. Maulik is not just another task force, it is a program focused on stopping the distribution of meth and opioids, as well as placing enough police officers patrolling our streets. It is time to make Guam Maulik again.
Re-elect Senator Chris Dueñas. The fight continues.
I am Chris Dueñas, and I approve this message.
Reggae in Paradise. Let's vibe out to some of the hottest Irie vibes on all your playlists. Join the vibes on November 19th at Paseo Stadium. It's on a Saturday, and we have an amazing lineup of artists. Mixplate, Bubba B, Fantasia, The John Dank Show,
Still running away.
Kimmy A. Minor, Lickle Jordy, High Water, and Rebel Sojas. Get your tickets now at guamtime.net. What are you waiting for? Presenting sponsors, big thanks to Riga Royal, IT&E, White Claw, GVB, Gasolina, Linda's Diner, and Empire Media and Entertainment. Saturday, November 19th, Reggae in Paradise. We'll see you there.
Okay, so here we are. We got about 10 more minutes till the big halftime show, and today is the day that we rerun Hope Cristobal's screen test. I'm sure you're waiting for that one. Interesting political cartoon on the editorial page of the Daily News today. There's a cliff, a sign with an arrow saying "End of Democracy," and a figure labeled voters about to step off. And then the bubble says, inflation taking us over a cliff? The implication here is that inflation can be the end of democracy. You know, that word is so often misused that I think I'm going to spend a minute telling you what the word democracy actually means. For Democrats, it's stuff they really like and stuff that they hate about Republicans. When the Republicans do something, the Democrats are quick to say, you know, that's a threat to democracy. Or like the Supreme Court in the Dobbs decision. In the Dobbs decision, the Supreme Court said, Mr. Justice Alito said, that Roe versus Wade was decided wrong 49 years ago. A decision that should have never been made by folks in black robes was, and it's a decision that ought to be decided by the folks out in the states, the popular branches of government, the folks that were elected, not the lifetime black-robed oligarchs that sit on the Supreme Court. So it was as democratic as any decision as the Supreme Court has ever made. It's very unusual to find any government agency, a court agency or whatever, that will willingly give up some of its power to an elected branch of the government. And that's exactly what happened. But what do the Democrats say? Oh, it's a threat to our democracy when a woman can't kill what's living inside of her just because she wants to. That's a threat to our democracy. And when the Republicans say, we only want folks to vote once, and we want to make sure that people vote that are eligible to vote, threat to our democracy. So here we are. Somehow inflation can be a threat to our democracy. This is what democracy means. It's a combination of two Greek words. C-R-A-C-Y, crassy, means rule, okay? Demo means people. So democracy means rule by the people. And there are various forms of democracy. The purest form of democracy that you'll ever find is the mob.
We're going to see it at the top of the hour with the screen test.
Oh, yeah, that's real democracy.
Real democracy in action.
So, the mob is a pure form of democracy because the people decide what they want to do. The majority rules. They don't have to horse around with a lot of silly rules and procedures. They just do what the majority wants. The lynch mob, the lynch mob is decried as anti-democratic. It was pure democracy. We don't need any courts to decide whether this fellow's guilty. We don't need any fair play. We don't need any laws. We know what we know. It's just common sense. We've got a rope, we got a tree, and we got this fellow over here. Anybody opposed to stringing this guy up right now? There being none. Haul him up. That's democracy. Wonderful thing, isn't it? So, just repeating the word democracy is not the most persuasive argument that you can make. We have a representative democracy in our country. We have people that sit at the seat of government, our national government, in the House of Representatives and in the Senate. And these people represent voters. Voters vote for these representatives, a representative democracy or a republic. We have a convoluted representative democracy for the choice of our presidents. But we do have a rule by the people. No one gets to be in the lawmaking business unless he has the assent of at least some of the people. Not a perfect system. The best we've ever seen by a long shot since 1783. Okay, so no, inflation is not the end of democracy. It may be the end of the United States dollar, but it's not the end of democracy. And by the way, I'm going to give my two stock tips one more time. if you're buying stock, I suggest that you buy stock in companies that build wheelbarrows. Go long, borrow money, buy it on the margin. Stock up on companies that build wheelbarrows. But short, wait a minute, maybe I got that backwards. Yeah, short stock in paper-making companies, because the value of paper-making companies is going to plummet. Here's why. Because the value of the dollar is sinking so fast that the day will come when you're going to need a wheelbarrow to wheel enough currency, enough paper money, down to the store to buy a loaf of bread. So the demand for wheelbarrows will greatly increase, causing the price to go up. On the other hand, because you'll be flooded in so much paper currency, you're not going to have to spend any money on toilet paper at all. Therefore, it's going to be a tough day for paper companies. All right, back into this editorial end of the Daily News. Another controversy was stirred in the weeks leading to Election Day as ancestral landowners with claims to land in the Manilo area again met with the governor and lawmakers to further discuss what could be done should a new, much-needed medical complex be built at Eagles Field. Now, whoever wrote this apparently had a straight face at the time that it was being written. I can't. I'm just chuckling at the naivete, or perhaps the willing to gaslight people that read this thing. Governor Lulian Guerrero and lawmakers have explained that because of federal laws, any land deemed as excess inventory must be utilized for the public good. What a horrible idea! Used for the public good? What about the 10 ancestral landowners over there at Eagles Field? To fix this, federal law must be changed. A change that could cost money and time that neither the local government nor landowners can easily afford. So to change the federal law would cost money. Now, I have this mental image here. We send somebody to Washington, with a carpet bag full of currency, and as he's shaking hands with various members of the House and the Senate, he's stuffing wads of bills into their pockets. And then he said, don't forget about the original landowners. It's going to cost money. That's a novel way of putting it. And the original landowners can't easily afford that money. They don't have enough money to bribe somebody. So maybe we could make an appropriation for that, right?
Nothing collateral.
Yeah. Well, they could pledge their land, their ancestral titles, right? All right, let's take a break for the big halftime show, and we'll come back to Zemi and Cotney after the show.
The Point is KUSG, Hagåtña, Guam, 93.3 FM and 104.3 HD3.
The Georgia governor race in the spotlight. I'm Laura Cantor, Fox News. Georgia Republican Governor Brian Kemp and his Democratic opponent Stacey Abrams battling it out in their final debate before the midterm elections. Governor Kemp denouncing Abrams' past views on how to tackle crime.
She proposed in 2018 eliminating cash bail. Men and women in law enforcement know who is going to be with them, who has had their back and will continue to have their back, and that is me. And that's why we have the endorsement of 107 sheriffs around the state.
Sound courtesy of WSB TV. Here's Abrams saying that she is against defunding the police.
I did not say, and nor do I believe in defunding the police. He is lying again.
And I've never said that I believe in defunding the police. I believe in public safety and accountability.
WSB TV again with the sound. In the aftermath of the attack on House Speaker Nancy Pelosi's husband, Republican New York Congresswoman Nicole Malliotakis compares the incident with crime issues in New York City on Fox Report with John Scott.
I think it's a terrible situation, and certainly we should always condemn violence and assault. That is one of the biggest issues we're seeing in New York City right now, is that crime has soared, and we're seeing individuals assaulted and attacked every single day on our subways, on our streets, people being brutally stabbed in the street, in the subway.
82-year-old Paul Pelosi is expected to make a full recovery. He had surgery for a skull fracture. The 42-year-old suspect, David DePapi, set to be arraigned in court Tuesday. At least 132 people have been killed after a pedestrian bridge collapsed into a river in the western part of India. The colonial-era bridge had recently reopened to the public after repairs. The bridge was unable to handle the number of people on it. America is listening to Fox News.
Of the day, I'm Senator Chris Dueñas. We've gone from a viral pandemic to a drug epidemic. It is time to stand up the multi-agency unified law enforcement group to stem the flow of drugs and combat crime with force. MAULIC is not just another task force, it is a program focused on stopping the distribution of meth and opioids, as well as placing enough police officers patrolling our streets. It is time to make Guam MAULIC again.
Re-elect Senator Chris Dueñas. The fight continues.
I am Chris Dueñas, and I approve this message.
Gas is expensive, so let the bank come to you. Through our remote deposit capture, you can deposit your checks into your account from your phone. And with our Dynamite Bank Pacific Visa debit card, you can use your money anytime, anywhere. It's the perfect combo.
Now we're banking on the future. Services to choose. Bank Pacific, where others put branches, we place roots.
Equal housing lender. Member FDIC. Crank it up.
The congressmen leading their respective parties' election efforts say they're keeping a close eye on election integrity. More from Fox's Gernal Scott.
Minnesota Republican Tom Emmer says he expects 2022 to be a different year at the polling places because COVID was a factor 2 years ago.
They were adjusting election laws on the fly. I think a lot of that has been resolved.
His counterpart, New York Democrat Sean Patrick Maloney, says he also foresees competitive races next week.
And in a close election, you might have a recount, you might have other examination of absentee ballots. That's all run-of-the-mill stuff.
Both men on CBS Face the Nation. They agree there is no place for violence against candidates or their families in any election.
A special guest at a country superstar's concert causing some backlash online. Fox's Kevin Uretsky has the details.
Luke Bryan's concert in Jacksonville Friday night doubled as a fundraiser for Florida's victims of Hurricane Ian.
We're going to have some fun, and we're going to raise some money tonight for the great state of Florida. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the stage, Governor Ron DeSantis.
While many in the crowd cheered, online the response was not as positive, with some calling it a political stunt so close to the midterms. One person on Twitter writing, quote, "Note to self, cancel Luke Bryan." On Saturday, DeSantis tweeted, quote, "Thanks for letting me crash the party last night at Luke Bryan." Bryan did not respond on social media, simply posting on Instagram that, quote, "Jacksonville got me fired up for the weekend."
The Associated Press college football poll has Tennessee moving into a tie with Ohio State in the number 2 position, setting up a 1 versus 2 matchup next week between the Volunteers and number 1 Georgia. The Bulldogs remaining number 1 for the 4th straight week. I'm Laura Cantor, Fox News.
Are you looking for a new place to hang out with your friends? Let's go along the sidelines at Sidelines Bar and Grill. Located at 154 Iriarty Road, Unit 4 and 5 in Sunwinning behind Royal Bigs. Sidelines, a hidden gem with nothing but great things to offer. Great atmosphere, great food, top shelf drinks, and a great team. What are we waiting for? Let the fun begin at Sidelines Bar and Grill. Open daily from 3 p.m. to 2 a.m. See you there.
Joyce Broadcasting introduces their unbeatable lineup of morning shows.
Hands down winners of Guam's morning radio battle.
Daryl Lizama grooves his way through Boss 104 playing Guam's favorite classic hits.
Morning mouth Ray Gibson shakes the cage on 93.3 The Point.
And now, we are proud to announce the Morning Blender with Kyle Mandapat, mixing it up at sunrise on Star 101.
If you're an advertiser trying to reach the most valuable ears, we've got the shows that listeners have been tuning into for decades.
One call gets all three.
671-888-7346. That's 888-REIO.
Listen to The Point anytime, anywhere on Odyssey. Odyssey is your new audio home for all the music, news, sports, and podcasts that matter to you. Find your favorite stations like The Point and discover more. Music stations, local and trusted news sources, sports talk and team coverage, plus today's biggest podcasts. Find it all on the Odyssey app. AUDACY.
So here we are, another great halftime show put on by none other than the legendary Jose Martinez, who's been doing it for quite a while, and he's really good at it. During the halftime show, you had a chance to look at the Tailgaters Rogues Gallery, pictures of folks who proudly sport their I'm a Tailgater t-shirt, have sent us selfies on our WhatsApp, and we post them with pride. And glad to have you aboard the Tailgaters Rogues Gallery. You, too, could see your face on the screen here on Tall Tales. If you don't have a T-shirt yet, it's time, more than time to get it. I think Jose has probably posted something in the Facebook chain. If not, go to this URL, thepoint.gu, and look for the beard. Do a little clicking, and you can buy yourself a Tailgater T-shirt. And once you got it, Jose will tell you what the WhatsApp number is, and you can WhatsApp us a picture of it, and we'll pop it up there in the Rhodes Gallery. Go ahead, Jose.
That would be 671-797-8255, the Point's WhatsApp number.
Yeah, so we're looking forward to getting... did you notice, Jose, that everybody in that Rogues Gallery are really handsome people? The gals, the guys are really nice-looking folks. I suspect it's the T-shirt effect. Putting that T-shirt on just works wonders for you.
It's a +1 fortitude.
Absolutely. So
charisma.
Yeah, let's spread the good word about Tall Tales. Buy those T-shirts. Get on Rogues Gallery. Wear them around. You're going to go to a political rally or something like that. Wear your Tailgater T-shirt. People will know that you're really checked out and you know what the heck's going on. Okay, let's, without further ado, let's find out why we want Hope Cristobal to be in charge of self-determination here on the island. Go ahead.
Colonizer! You're nothing but a white colonizer. That's who you are. Colonization is the same thing as slow murder. You're a murderer. That's who you are.
We need to just do different. We need to do better.
Get off my island.
Sir, you need to go. You can't be policing people here and telling people how to protest or what to protest for. You need to go.
You need to go. That's cool, but you cannot be policing people and telling them how to protest and what to advocate for. She has a right to go.
I'm an indigenous tomorrow. I have more rights here than you are. You came here because of the structures of colonialism, asshole. Tayo mamalaw, sige, Jojo, tano. Titaw-taw-tano, how? Waho bini taw-taw-tano. Waho bini magahoga. Waho restaurant na guy you bini. Hago taza restaurant mo bini. You need to leave.
You need to go.
Please.
You need to get out of here.
Please, sponsor.
Get out of here.
Please, this is not your
When I get a chance, go.
Please, please. Thank you. Thank you, sponsor. Please, please. No, you cannot confront.
What happened, ma'am?
Well, he confronted me.
What did he
He's
say?
telling me I shouldn't be here. I support Black Lives Matter. It's part of the colonialistic systemic racism. And I came here to support these people. He's a white man that has come here. And he continues the legacy of colonialism. He continues to fight people, individuals, my goodness. I'm a former senator. I authored the Commission on Decolonization. Ay, mamalo.
We are proud of you, Auntie.
Si Diyos mangasi.
Yeah, we're proud of you, Auntie. It's really nice work. He's a white man. That's enough, right? So Hope Cristobal is the chairman of the Chamorro Language Commission and one of the manakilu in the whole independence, self-determination, separatist movement. So can you imagine a government run by the likes of Hope Cristobal? Imagine what that would be like if we pulled down the stars and stripes and ran up a picture of Hope. As
Bring your earplugs.
Yeah. She, I guess her we could call this Hope's Charm Offensive. Well, we play it every Monday. It's a public service. I think you really need to know who the folks in the separatist movement are, and she is the face and voice of the separatist movement. Okay, I'm going to go back and wrap up this give the land back to the original landowners thing here. I had a little bit more to read on the Daily News' editorial. The governor has introduced legislation, the Land Bank Reform Act of 2022, to clarify criteria for ancestral land ownership and create the funding streams necessary to compensate landowners and their heirs. This could be an achievable mechanism for timely compensation and an efficient route to building a better hospital for Guam. Now, how does making ex gratia payments to people who have no right to it help us build a better hospital for Guam? I think we need to spend as much money as we got on the hospital, not giving it away. Given the state of Guam Memorial Hospital and the need for another hospital to adequately serve a population burdened by chronic diseases, serve a population burdened by chronic diseases. It's our view that decisions made by the executive branch must be in the best interest of all of Guam's people. Isn't that what I just been jabbering about here since the beginning of the show? The best interest of all of the people. And the people's best interest includes spending less to build a new modern hospital and not spending more to renovate a failing facility. Well, you could make that argument, I think. The current medical complex on the drawing board with its plans, studies, and designs already in the works must move forward. The talks have gone on too long, and too much time and money have already been spent on the current plan. Ask Ken Leon Guerrero. Yeah, Ken didn't have to go to Facebook jail for his comments. He almost had a chance to go.
He's the real deal.
Yeah. Additionally, utilizing the Eagles field land provides an opportunity to work with the military, which in exchange for also using the complex has expressed interest in contributing to its financing and operations. That all sounded good to me, too. The tensions in our region will not be ignored by the federal government. Any hope for full return of excess lands to ancestral landowners could be decades away. It could be never, folks. Far too long for today's heirs to see any sort of closure or compensation. Compensation and closure are not synonymous one with the other. The reason that there isn't any closure is all of the panderers out there singing this "Give the Land Back to the Original Landowner" song, just like the Pacific Daily News. It's time to listen to, the editorial wraps up, it's time to listen to sound advice, move forward with our plans to build a new hospital, and take advantage of the opportunity to work with the military in building a new medical complex. You'd had a good editorial there if you'd left the part out about the ancestral landowners, which is a distraction at best. So much for the Daily News. No Blue Star today, Daily News. You got to try a little harder. Okay, I have another editorial reading here, and then we'll get into the card. This is Helen Middlebrook's column for today, and this is what Helen said. Awareness can still mean inaction. It's admirable that twin brothers, Davon and Trayvon Wood, are walking around the country to raise awareness of the foster care system. But as a foster parent, I really wonder what good it does. Awareness of anything, breast cancer, Down syndrome, employment of the disabled, foster care, or whatever, is not action. Nothing happens simply from being, quote, aware. But it makes you feel good, Jose. Knowing is not doing. And even though we like to say, quote, knowledge is power, that's not really true. Knowledge often just puffs up, as the Apostle Paul noted. Unless that knowledge takes action, it's useless. The foster care system needs people who want to do right by children and their parents, and laws that enable them to do that. Recently, I gave testimony on Bill 299-36, a law that would give Child Protective Services more teeth when it comes to getting kids out of foster care and into permanent homes. It would enable faster termination of parental rights so children could be adopted sooner. It's needed legislation. But I was disappointed at that hearing because so few testified and even fewer senators were present. Only 2 senators were there for the entire hearing, while 1 floated in and out. Now, I'm going to come back to that. There were just 4 presenters. I was the only foster parent there, but I was the one who needed to be there. When we talk about lingering in the foster care system, my boys who are disabled are the champions. As of this writing, one has been in foster care 5,347 days. His younger brother has been in the system 5,164 days since birth. That's over 14 years. My boys spent 6 and 5 years in the temporary shelter before they came to me. They have been with me 9 years. It's complicated to explain why they are still foster status, but it has to do with the system. If the system had worked well, they would have been adopted longer before I ever had the opportunity to be their mother. Even though I truly am their money, I have not changed their status. Once I do, Gov Guam washes its hands of them, and I am left to cover the entire bill for a 3-month-long surgical procedure that one requires. In some states, those who adopt our foster care get continued financial assistance. Not here. Once the recovery is complete, I will take action. To finally get them out of foster care, to finally make them mine. A really good article and an interesting premise. Just knowing about something, say, oh yeah, I really know about that. Doesn't make any difference at all. But I have to come back to Helen. because she comes along and she exposes the problem, she gives a solution, etc. And then she says, but I was disappointed at that hearing because so few testified. Only 2 senators were there for the whole entire hearing, while one floated in and out. So, okay, what do I do with that? I don't know who the 2 senators were. And because I don't know who the 2 senators were, I don't know who the other members of the committee were that didn't come. If I knew the names of the 2 senators and the floater, you could bet a Hong Kong dollar that I would have taken action. But I see this all the time. I see people writing columns, writing letters to the editor, and really coming down hard on the politicians because they didn't do this or they did do that. But you're not naming any names. If you don't identify the miscreant, you fall into Helen's category here of all knowledge, no action. So if you're going to take on the political establishment, you got to tell us who you're talking about, not a generality of, oh, politicians lie a lot. Like, I know this politician who told a lie at the public hearing, but I'm not going to tell you what his name is. So there we go. So Helen, you got a good idea there. I hope you can let me know who the 2 senators were. I suppose I could spend a couple hours research and figure it out for myself, but time's at a premium. I hope you can tell me who the 2 senators were and who the floater was, and they'll be back on the show tomorrow. Thank you. Okay, let's take a look at the card. By request of Ray, I start out with the Pacific Island Times versus Guam Memorial Hospital. Ray picked this up this morning and asked specifically that I get after it. I've got a couple holdovers. I've got senatorial candidates versus themselves, and Malkin versus the mainstream media. I'll maybe get to those tomorrow, but I was going to do them on Friday. I didn't get to it, but they're still on the card. So I've got Pacific Island Times versus GMH. I've got the Election Commission versus signage. I've got the Civil Service Commission versus Tall Tales. And that's all I've got on for the card today. Of course, I only got, 38 more minutes to go, right? Yeah, and I got a phone call here that I need to pick up before I go into the card. It is none other than R. Keith. Hey, whatever happened to R. Carl?
He's called in a few times.
Really?
But a few times.
That's not like...
He's still around, though.
That's not like R. Carl.
Maybe he was on a mission.
It could be, yeah. After all, he is...
the most dangerous man.
The most dangerous man. Okay, so we got R. Keith. R. Keith usually has something very poignant to say. He gets on it. He makes his point very quickly and very clearly. So go for it, R. Keith.
Hello, gentlemen. Welcome back, Bob. I hope you had a good respite.
Did indeed.
I just got a chuckle out of the Daily Snooze op-ed. It's just a continuation of what I see coming out of the administration here and the Hope Strobel wing of the University of Guam. They take every opportunity to bash the military, to bash U.S., colonialist, racist, blah, 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 blah. And then in the very next moment, insist on reparations or land return or whatever have you. But then in the very next breath, they continue to talk about, the things like the hospital or road improvements or utility improvements that the military is funding. And do they honestly believe that if they either gain independence or continue this vitriol, that the military is going to keep writing checks? There's no old expression, you don't bite the hand that feeds you, folks.
True enough, R. Keith.
I just don't get it. Anyway, there was just something that occurred to me while you were reading the article. They breathlessly glide into the colonialist, return the land, and all this, and then they talk about the military funding for the hospital. So is the military good? Is the military bad? Or is the military only good when it's writing checks? It just seems to be a one big great hypocrisy.
Well, if you can't engage in grievance politics, then just stay out of it. If you don't have something to gripe about, if you can't cast yourself as the underdog, the marginalized, then you really don't know who'd want to listen to you, Keith.
Yeah. But anyway, that was just something occurred to me. I just thought I'd pipe in.
Glad you did.
So, have a good evening, gentlemen, and talk to you soon.
Good talking to you as usual, Keith. Okay, so the Pacific Island Times versus Guam Memorial Hospital. Now, Ray mentioned this morning that he has a certain reliance on the stuff that appears in the Pacific Island Times because the publisher, Marvik Kagarangan, is a real journalist and has been for a long time and has established her credibility with everybody who pays attention. So here's what Marvik Kagarangan is telling us. GMH retains consulting firm for $2.4 million. For every amount collected from patients with outstanding accounts, a private consulting company hired by the hospital claims 12%. Between October 21 and February this year, GMH paid a company called Med Health Solutions more than $800,000. And a statement of account dated January 1, 2022, showed that the hospital still owes the company $720,543 for 3 pending invoices. Documents show that beside collecting dues from self-pay patients, MedHealth is also tasked with collecting reimbursements from third-party insurers. And here's a quote here. Part of the collections is illegal due to some of the COVID patients' medical expenses have already been reimbursed by Federal CARES Act funding, according to a GMH insider. The article goes on to say, GMH is double dipping to put money into their friends' pockets by going after the poor, the source said, naming 3 people who are allegedly silent partners at MedHealth. According to Deloitte Touche, April 12 audit report, GMH received $4.5 million from the Centers for Medicare and Medicaid Services in April 2021. The amount was granted under the Expanded, Accelerated, and Advanced Payments Program. CMS issued these payments to help ease financial strain due to a disruption in claims submission and claims processing related to the coronavirus disease's 2019 public health emergency, the audit report said. According to the auditors, GMH repayment was scheduled to begin April 2021 through an automatic gradual recoupment of Medicare payments otherwise owed to GMH. Documents indicated that GMH issued a total of 5 purchase orders from MedHealth worth $2.4 million since 2021. Cindy Hansen, information officer at GMH, said the contract with MedHealth was thoroughly reviewed and approved by the Office of the Attorney General. I've seen that one before. Yeah. All right, let's head for Wrigley Field, and we'll come back to this right after we go to the 7th inning stretch.
Reggae in Paradise. Let's vibe out to some of the hottest Irie vibes on all your playlists. Join the vibes on November 19th at Paseo Stadium. It's on a Saturday, and we have an amazing lineup of artists. Mix Plate, Bubba B, Fantasia, The John Dank Show,
Still running away.
Kimmy A. Minor, Liquid Jordy, High Water, and Rebel Soul. Sojas. Get your tickets now at guamtime.net. What are you waiting for? Presenting sponsors, big thanks to Riga Royal, IT&E, White Claw, GVB, Gasolina, Linda's Diner, and Empire Media and Entertainment. Saturday, November 19th, Reggae in Paradise. We'll see you there.
Half a day. This is Clara Manglona from Security Title. A power of attorney can be a useful tool in a real estate transaction, but if abused, it can result in devastating loss. Choosing your representative should be done with the utmost care and should be very specific about the powers being granted. To mitigate loss, the team at Security Title confirms with the owner prior to using a power of attorney to sell the property. Each transaction is unique. Let the professionals at Security Title use our experience to facilitate a secure closing. We are here to help.
Okay, so Cindy Hansen said the Attorney General says, okay, so if I could send you a grain of salt over the internet, I would, because that's what you need to have handy when you read something thoroughly reviewed and approved by the Office of the Attorney General. The Office of the Attorney General will say, yeah, you complied with the procurement law, you didn't break any laws. Your contract or your papers are regular in a proper form, but it's not going to say you're screwing the people or you're getting screwed. The scope of services was essentially to assist and enhance GMH processes in capturing and collection of patient revenue in accordance with the Healthcare Financial Management Association, Hansen said in an email. In addition, the MedHealth Consultant Group will provide guidance and training to GMH staff until such time that GMH's capabilities are stable and secure to sustain its revenue cycle management. According to the transcript of the GMH Board of Directors 2020 meeting, after being unable to secure approval by the Office of the Attorney General for sole source procurement, the GMHA prepared and issued a request for proposal for the same service. The hospital's first purchase order was for $450,000, issued May 27, 2021. The signed agreement with the MedHealth Solutions will be forwarded to the Office of the Attorney General for approval and then routed to the Office of the Governor. MedHealth Solutions will be providing training for the staff to capture all possible claims, among other services. The transcript reads, the desired effective date is June 2020, but delays were expected due to travel restrictions. A report by the Office of Public Accountability in April stated that MedHealth began reviewing the hospital's current revenue cycle management processes in June of 2021. The term of the contract with the consultant is 1 year with completion in May of 2022, when GMH staff will manage the revenue cycle after proper training and updated policies and procedures. In an affidavit of ownership disclosure stated July 12, 2020, Renee Ramos of Tamuning, Paul Panetta of Dededo, and Glenn Hermes of Texas are listed as owners of MedHealth Solutions. The company's website does not contain contact information for its owners and executives. Documents show that GMH issued MedHealth a $1.2 million purchase order on October 15 to cover the September 2021 collection fee and balance from August of 2021. On October 18, the company invoiced GMH amount of $801,000, etc., representing its 12% claim. Citing a GMH collection report, MedHealth's invoice showed that the hospital collected $13.8 million. Its formula indicated that MedHealth had a 12% claim from accounts receivable cash above $7.2 million, with a resulting difference of $6.67 million. And other more numbers, etc. Instead of going to this company, the money should have gone to the nurses and frontline workers, according to the source. To improve GMH's revenue cycle processes, the hospital procured in November 2021 an electronic claim scrubbing software, which will reduce rejections, etc., the OPA said in its April report. OPA found that deficiencies that have been identified in 2015 remain uncorrected as of fiscal 2021. So, and more of the numbers, etc. So this is interesting, not for what it says, but for what it doesn't say. Because Troy is the one who first broke this story. And I have a feeling that everybody reads Troy. A lot of folks don't want to admit it, but it's a good source of information. And Troy goes much farther into it. I suspect that what Marvick is doing here is she's just laying the foundation. Article today, a lot of investigation between now and the 15th, coming up to another story, and some heavy-duty stuff, because according to Troy, there's some really heavy-duty stuff here. Now, with respect to the unnamed principals, the shadow members, the silent partners, Troy came up with 3 names. If you want to see what the names are, go to Troy's website. I've mentioned in the read to the show that we occasionally get involved with rumors and gossips, but only very, very carefully. Now, Troy, names the names, but that's it. And he also mentioned that he contacted one of the people, but there was no response. Takes a little bit more to provide the kind of reliability that I want to use here on Tall Tales. But if Troy is onto something, it's big. It's really big. And I hope Marvick takes it and grabs it by the nape of by the seat of the pants and the stacking swivel and shakes it till everything falls out of it, because it looks like a really interesting story. So go get him, Marvick.
At the least, there's a huge curiosity factor here. That whole 12%, which is it coming from?
Well,
the total or from what they did?
Well, there's a threshold of about 700,000, and anything they collect above that, they get 12% of. But, one of the things that Troy says is they get 12% of the money they collect from medical providers. So FHP owes money to the hospital. These guys come along and say, you got to pay us because we get 12% of it, right? And Troy also says that these guys get a cut of the tax garnishments. So if you have an income tax refund of $10,000 and you owe the hospital $5,000, the director of Rev Tax can take that $5,000 and send it to the hospital. That's pretty easy money to make 12% off. There's just a lot of stuff here that doesn't look right. And then the other thing is this: a collection agency can't do anything that you can't do for yourself. They can send letters. Under certain circumstances, they might be able to call you. But if you really want to if you want to collect money, you need to have a lawyer, and you need to sue people who don't want to pay. And a collection agency cannot do that. Okay, I'm going on next to the Election Commission versus signs. And let's see who I got in the green room here. It is none other than Ken LG, who wants to talk about the hospital. A guy who is pretty interested in the hospital, that's for sure. Tell me more, Ken.
Well, as you know, I've been FOIAing their documents, and for 2020 and 2021, I was looking at their checkbook every month until I got too disgusted to continue to do that. But I've read this contract, and this contract blows my mind because back in my corporate days, I used collection services, you know, and the way we used a collection service, they got a percentage of everything they collected. They didn't get a percentage of my entire revenue stream. And the way this contract is written, they get an additional, you know, so if they go out and collect, you know, I'm a patient, they collect $100 from me, then they also collect 12% on top of the revenue stream, which includes that $100. So they actually get 30% on the money they collected from me through their own effort. Then they get 12% on the overall revenue stream with no cutout.
Amazing.
So basically, the way a normal collection contract reads is you get 30% or whatever of whatever you collect. This one says we get 12% of everything you collect, and we get 30% on everything we collect. But when we look at the adjustment period, then we're actually going to get 12% on everything we collect in addition to the 30. So on efforts that they collect, it looks like they're going to get 42% of the money. But the part that's really upsetting is they're getting money from the Medicaid. There's no collection effort on Medicare or Medicaid or with the insurance companies or the self-pay people who actually come in and make their payments. But this company is going to get a cut of that.
Wow.
So that's the way it's looking right now. I think you're looking at $2 to $3 million a year that's not going to restocking the pharmacy, not going to purchasing new equipment, not going to critical repairs that should have been done years ago. It's going outside of the revenue stream of the hospital. And another thing that was odd about this, all the other contracts I've seen, because I looked at a lot of their contracts, they're all signed by Lillian. This is the only contract I've seen that's signed by the governor. So when I look at contracts at GWA and GPA and the port, they were all signed by the general manager, not the governor. This is the first time I've seen the governor sign a contract outside of government of Guam. So that's kind of an oddity.
Yes, sir. Have you been in contact with the public auditor on this, Ken? I hope you have.
No, I know. I went and talked with the FBI about it because of the federal funds involved.
Uh-huh.
So I just, you see, that's the duty of citizens. You know, if you see something, say something. And all too often, the people of Guam, they see something, they don't say something out of fear. You know, the FBI is probably one of the agencies that should be looking into this because of the federal funds aspect. But they don't sit there and read the newspaper and say, this article in Pacific Island Times looks real interesting. We better open an investigation. You know, that it requires someone to step up and make a complaint. So I did. I stepped up and I made a complaint. Whether it goes anywhere or not, we'll see. But the FBI, I gave the FBI all the information I had at this point, and we'll see where they take it from there. But the important thing is, this is just really, really bad for the taxpayers of Guam, because remember, the donut hole or the deficit for the Guam Memorial Hospital has climbed from $10 million a year back in 2016, 2017, to now we're at $50 million a year ever since Bill 30 got passed and gutted the financials of the hospital by that 2-year period where Guam Regional had control over who got to bid on the health insurance contract. That was really bad. It cost taxpayers somewhere around $20 to $30 million, and now we're looking at $2 to $4 million a year being diverted on top of that. But even though that money's being diverted, those bills have to get paid from somewhere. It's going to come out of taxpayers. That's why I'm upset about this, because it was a legitimate revenue for the hospital, but it's not being used for the hospital. It's being used for something other than the hospital.
Yeah, something that is really shocking, Ken, and kudos to you for digging into this stuff. You certainly understand the responsibilities that come with citizenship, and you're exactly what Helen Middlebrook was talking about in her column today. You know, you got to do something more than just know about this stuff. You got to do something with it. So good for you.
Looks like his call just dropped again.
Okay, well, he got his point across. So thank goodness for Ken LG, right? Okay, let's head for Churchill Downs, and we'll wrap the show up here today.
Kona Brewing Company, Wenti Vineyards, and First Hawaiian Bank presents internationally renowned slack key master, Ledward Ka'apana. Ledward Ka'apana, founding member of the legendary Hawaiian music group Hui o Hana, joined Grammy-nominated and multiple Nahoku Hanohano Award winner Ledward Ka'apana for 2 magical nights.
Saturday, November 12th, the Tsubaki Tower. Doors open at 6 p.m. And Sunday, November 13th, the Hotel Nico Guam. Doors open at 5 p.m. Tickets are available at Ambrose and at the door. $40 in advance and $50 at the door.
Slack Key Master Ledward Ka'apana, live on Guam, Saturday, November 12th and Sunday, November 13th.
Presented by Kona Brewing Company, Wenti Vineyards, and First Hawaiian Bank. Special thanks to Choice Broadcasting, The Point, Star 101, and Boss 104.
Come try Guam's original Chamorro restaurant with Pika's best 5 years running. Mezcla Chamorro Fusion Bistro. Experience Chef Peter's candied salmon over scallion coconut rice, octopus to naktak, Chamorro platter, and their award-winning gourmet hamburgers. Or if you're looking for something healthy, try their keto-friendly menu. Come and enjoy Mezcla's half-a-day service at their Hagåtña and Grand Plaza Tumon location. Call their Hagåtña location at 479-2652 for reservations.
So here we go. The last laps of Tall Tales from Churchill Downs all the way to the finish line, and I can wrap up another episode of Tall Tales. But here to help me do it is one of our friends from Salt Lake City, a guy who knows a little bit about the hospital because he used to work there. It's none other than the infamous, the famous, the one and only Johnny Utah. Go for it, Johnny.
Well, actually, I have a question that I was going to ask you and see if you would be willing to elaborate on. One of the solutions that everyone seems to say for the hospital, which is I want to thank Ken. That was an awesome spill he gave there that he just said. I'm grateful that he's willing to do that for the people of Guam. And everyone there should be happy that they have Ken on that island. But now that I'm done, saying my congratulations to Ken, one of the things that everyone says that needs to happen is that the hospital needs to be taken away from GovGuam and that it needs to be put into receivership. And I was just wondering, as an attorney and as a person with a lot of knowledge, if you could elaborate on if you know what would happen with the hospital if it was put into receivership.
Well, you appoint someone to take over the management of it, and he has some ability to restructure the debt of the hospital. But I don't see that as the solution to what we're dealing with. There are a couple of folks who have come forward and said, what we ought to do is we ought to buy GRMC and turn that into Guam Memorial Hospital. I'm absolutely against that, because we've got one good hospital now, and giving it to the government of Guam will mean we'll be back to the point where we had no good hospitals. But what we need to do is we need to depoliticize the hospital. You know, if you go back to the mainland, there are several corporations like Aurora, and I can't remember all the names that are in the hospital management business.
Kaiser,
yeah, and we could contract with them to come out here and run our hospital and get some smart people to sit down and say, this is what we want them to do, and this is how much we want to pay them, and go ahead and do it instead of running this, what has been a dump ever since I can remember, where, you know, you got somebody who you owe a political favor to, you don't know what else to do with them, send them up to the hospital. And we've got too many people doing too little. We don't have skilled management up there. We may have good doctors, but a lot of times we really can't tell. Ask David Lebowski about that. So that to me is a solution, Johnny.
Well, that's interesting about and it's funny because when I first started calling and talking to you, I think our first conversation was in regards to my opinion that I felt like Gov Guam was going to eventually take over GRMC and turn it into GMH. Do you remember that?
I do, yeah.
And that was my insight from working there, from when I was there. That's been a rumor going throughout GMH for a while.
Well, that to me would be a disaster for the reasons that I just mentioned.
Well, understandable. I forget the doctor that calls into Ray's show. There's a doctor that used to be in charge of GMH before I was there that calls in. He's from Florida or Costa Rica or something like that.
Dr. Macris?
Yeah, Dr. Macris. Yeah.
He suggested exactly what my insight was, which was to expand on the GRMC campus in that area and build another GMH hospital there in proximity to GRMC and have them, support one another, have them, in proximity to one another. Maybe with those, if the homeless people can build an encampment there on that property and nobody can do anything about it, why can't they build a GMH there?
Sounds good to me, Johnny.
That because in the mainland, in every state that you go to, the hospitals are all in proximity to one another, especially in metropolitan areas. And Guam in itself is a microcosm. It's not a rural state. Everything is really, even though people say, "Oh no, the South is far away," which it can be, especially in a life-saving situation. The reality is that by a helicopter, it's actually not that far. Or if you had nice roads that were maintained and good vehicles, that emergency responding time would be a lot quicker. If you didn't have to deal with an asinine road that is torn up, you could get there in a reasonable amount of time to save a life. And most of the hospitals in major cities are all in a block of one another. They're all within reach of one another. So if one has something that they can't handle, that other one can take it, like a burn center or a neonatal neurologist, interventional type environment, or something that is dealing with pulmonary on a long-term scale that needs long-term acute care to take care of it, or any of the different modalities that are within medicine are in these different hospitals that can support one another, and they have relationships and they communicate. And I don't see any reason why they can't do that.
I'll endorse it, Johnny, based on your rap there. But good talking to you over there in Salt Lake City. I got to find out what R. James wants to tell me before the end of the show. Okay?
Yeah, you kick me off. I'm done. I'm done with my spill. Sorry to talk so much.
All right. Hey, R. James, how you doing?
Oh, I'm doing all right. Hope you're doing well, Bob.
I'm fine.
Yep. Well, let me lay out a little preface here, which is going to basically be kind of my opinion, but then I'm going to ask you a question, get your opinion on it. Okay, so we got people that want to build a new hospital and probably build it in a bad place. We got people that want to buy GRMC and still have the same management issues. We've got people that want to go in and rehab the existing building, which from a professional opinion, and I've been on the team that was there, I think they're going to find out that, I mean, the building might maybe be able to be rehabbed to be able to be used for, office spaces or commercial or something like that, but to be a primary emergency care, operating theater, trauma, emergency care center, I think they're going to find that it's probably going to cost as much, if not more, to try to rehab it than it's going to be able to, build a new facility, or at least pretty close to it. Not enough to make it worth it, I'll put it that way. And then we've got the group, we've got the camp that, they kind of don't really know what they want to do, but they think that they can just throw money at it and it'll fix the problem. Now, you just answered in my mind, a very staunch no to turning it over to receivership. And my personal opinion of the whole fiasco is that if it remains under Gov Guam, and if it remains under management and administration thereof, that even if you gave them a brand new facility, it's only going to be a matter of time until it's a wreck again. So what do you think about just privatization?
Well, that's what I was.
Turn it over.
That was my response to Johnny. That we need to depoliticize the management, and one of the things that I would consider would be contracting with one of these companies like Aurora or Kaiser, these hospital management companies that'll come in and run your hospital in accordance.
Well, no,
in accordance with the standards that you set.
Well, yeah, but see, there again, there's all of the contracting and everything that's involved. When I said privatization, I mean outright, like the government of Guam doesn't need to be in the hospital business. Turn it over, sell it, whatever, and let it be literally a private hospital. In my mind, any string attached or connected back to the government of Guam is a string that can be used for the wrong thing.
Well, that's an interesting idea. If it were private, it would be regulated by the Public Utilities Commission, so we wouldn't lose all control over it. It's a pretty good idea. As far as receivership is concerned, we went through that with the ORDOT dump, and
yeah, solid waste.
We went through that with the ORDOT dump because we didn't have the courage to do it ourselves. And so we brought in out-of-town Jaspers and pinchback suits and paid through the nose for something we probably could have done ourselves for half as much money. So I'm not too interested in walking down that road again.
Yeah.
But anything that tends to depoliticize the management, I think is a good idea. I got to say goodbye, James. I want to get another Joe on just before the show ends, okay?
You bet. Thanks, Bob.
Yes, sir. Another Joe, you can close for today.
That's what I'll talk about. Now, I have to disagree because I agree if private management, if it can be done while keeping the hospital as
Another Joe, I can't understand you. Are you talking on the phone or talking to your glass of milk? Are you there?
This is better.
No better.
Oh, no.
Well, I don't know if you can hear me or not, another Joe, but it's time for me to say...
Oh, thank you.
Let's go, Brandon.
The Point is KUSG, Hagåtña, Guam, 93.3 FM and 104.3 HD3.
Election day is fast approaching. I'm Laura Cantor, Fox News. With the midterm elections 8 days from now, candidates are hitting the campaign trail. At a rally at Florida's Ave Maria University, Florida Republican Governor Ron DeSantis discussing the ineffectiveness of crime policies in Democrat-run cities.
In New York, you go commit these criminal offenses and they let you out without any bail. People victimize their fellow New Yorkers, and then before they even go into court, they're committing more crimes.
Meanwhile, New York Congressman Sean Patrick Maloney, who is chairman of the Democratic Congressional Campaign Committee, tells CBS's Face the Nation that Democrats have effective plans to tackle crime.
We have a plan for safer streets, supporting good policing, and attacking gun violence, which is so much of the problem.
Lawmakers on both sides of the aisle denouncing the attack on House Speaker Nancy Pelosi's husband, Paul Pelosi, in their San Francisco residence. Here's Florida Republican Senator Rick Scott on ABC's This Week.
We've got to figure out how to bring our country back together where we have a civil conversation and, we have no violence. I mean, what happened to Paul Pelosi is despicable. It's unacceptable.
The suspect, 42-year-old David DePape, is scheduled to be arraigned Tuesday and is facing charges including attempted homicide and elder abuse. Grain exports from Ukraine now restricted due to Russia's blockade at Ukrainian Black Sea ports. Western leaders condemning Russia's actions, including President Biden.
He warns the cutoff of urgently needed grain exports could increase world hunger. Moscow claims it suspended a UN-brokered deal to allow the safe passage of grain ships because Ukrainian drones attacked Russia's fleet on the Black Sea. Ukraine denies the attack, accusing Russia of waging hunger games.
That's Fox's Ashley Strohmeyer. America is listening to Fox News.
It all started with the brutal murder of a young married couple. Now, more than 40 years after the couple was found, investigators and forensic genealogists are cracking the case wide open to uncover a stunning second mystery.
Where's the baby? I said, well, wait, he had a baby?
What happened to their baby daughter, Holly?
Where's Holly Marie? Where's Holly?
What about Holly? Get early exclusive access and ad-free on Fox News Podcasts Plus. Visit foxnewspodcasts.com to get started today.
Get all of your favorite Fox News podcasts commercial-free on Apple Podcasts with Fox News Podcasts Plus. From Dana Perino, Kennedy, Ben Domenech, The Duffys, and many more. Subscribe now by going to foxnewspodcasts.com. The Fox News Rundown, a contrast of perspectives you won't hear anywhere.